It's time to take a breath. After the longest AFL season ever, it already feels like the major media voices and shows are diving into the trade period and possibilities of 2025. It's a good sign that the AFL community is that invested in the sport and shows the hunger fans have to keep involved. But to switch it up a bit, let's actually track back through 2024 and have a look at some of the stranger results, best games from individuals and teams, while going through the big winners and losers. Let's start with the more memorable games. It feels like 2024 was the closest year ever, and the stats back it up. 59 games this season were decided by 10 points or less, beating the previous highest mark of 57 set from last season. Now Gather Round does give an extra set of games, but third place for games decided by less than 10 points was only 49 back in 2014. Week to week, the AFL is as close as it has ever been. We had 3 drawn games in 2024, starting off with Essendon and Collingwood on Anzac Day. If you remember, it was Kyle Langford who had a simple set shot to give Essendon the lead, and then moments after his miss, Jamie Elliott looked set to take an easy mark and potentially kick another game winner against Essendon, but he just dropped it. It was the second draw on Anzac Day between the clubs. The first was back in 1995 in the first Anzac Day fixture. In round 9, Adelaide and Brisbane drew at Adelaide Oval as the Crows, who were down by 18 points well into the final term, were able to even out the scores. It was their captain Jordan Dawson who missed this shot to give them the lead. And the final draw was 2 rounds later between Fremantle and Collingwood. A controversial umpire free kick got Fremantle going in red time as they piled on 4 straight goals as they were down by 25 points. But again, another game-winning shot was missed as Boom recruit Jeremy Sharp couldn't nail this running set shot to put Fremantle ahead. The only successful shot after the siren in 2024 was by Mac Andrew. After Essendon dominated the final term in field position, they got no reward, kicking 9 behinds. You could almost see the end result coming, and when Sam Collins' high ball came in, the athletic Andrew took a great mark. He had ice in his veins, shushed the crowd, and gave Gold Coast their first away win for the year, and marked one of the most iconic moments in the club's history. But Carlton's Mitch McGovern couldn't do the same. In Scott Pendlebury's 400th milestone, Carlton came from nowhere to make it a close game. And if you cast your mind back 7 years ago, McGovern kicked this goal after the siren against Collingwood, albeit for Adelaide, to draw the game. Well, he had the opportunity to win the critical round 21 matchup, but he never gave it a shot and kicked the ball out in the full. Logan McDonald had a similar fate for Sydney. The Swans were 1 point down to Fremantle in round 16 when McDonald took a mark to shoot after the siren. Now it was a tough shot from 50 metres out, but he completely shanked the kick and it ended the Swans' winning run. Who can forget the comeback of the season where Collingwood bounced the Roos with a 54-point overturned deficit? The 1 point win was the second biggest comeback in Collingwood history and equals 6th greatest all time. It was stuffed full of controversy, including that 50-metre non-decision after 2 Collingwood players charged over the mark, and Zach Fisher in the dying stages missed a snap that would have won North Melbourne the game. The Sydney Swans, who finished first on the ladder, also lost to a historically bad Richmond team that finished last. In hindsight, the Tigers' 5-point win was perhaps the biggest upset in the home and away season, as Sydney would go on to win 12 straight games. They also lost to Port Adelaide by 112 points in round 21, being only the second top of the table team to lose a game by 100 or more points. Throw in a huge boil over in the first Western Derby, where Harley Reid announced himself, the Saints almost knocking the Blues out of finals in round 24 thanks to a miracle Jack Higgins snap, and Brisbane blowing a 46-point lead to Carlton in opening round, yet overcoming a 44-point deficit of their own against GWS in the semi-final. It really has been a season full of the most wild results that we've ever seen. We also saw a bunch of great individual performances in 2024. Now there have been so many that I can't go through all of them, but for a bit of fun, let's go through the top 3 games for the entire season according to Champion Data. Using their player rating system, the best individual performance of the year was from Carlton's Tom De Koning. In round 15 against Essendon, he scored a 35.5 player rating. He gathered 25 disposals at 72% efficiency, had 7 clearances and 4 intercepts, topping off his night with a goal. Second place goes to Brent Daniels in round 23. The GWS small forward got a 33.8 rating for his monster 29 disposal, 3 goal and 13 tackle game against Fremantle. And rounding out the top 3 games according to Champion Data is Zach Merritt in round 17, who is just 0.1 off Brent Daniels with a 33.7 player rating. His game against Collingwood saw him rack up 30 disposals and kick a goal, but the best part of his game was his 15 score involvements. Moving away from those raw numbers, the biggest goal tally this year was a bag of 9 from a likely and unlikely source. Sydney's Joel Amartey had a party against Adelaide in round 14. It was by far the best game of his career, and his strike rate was what made the night even more incredible. He had just 10 disposals for his 9 goals and 1 behind. Every touch he had was impacting the scoreboard. Although it's hard to believe after that game, Amartey kicked just 12 goals from the remaining 12 games he played in. Jeremy Cameron in the last game of the year also equalled Amartey's 9 goals against the West Coast side halfway to their off-season holidays. Caleb Sarong in round 1 had the most disposals in a game with 46 against Brisbane, while Matt Rao in opening round had the most single clearances in a game with 20 against Richmond. First year player Harley Reid had the equal most free kicks against for the season with 7 in round 21 against Gold Coast, but also finished second for most free kicks in a game, getting 7 in round 11 against Adelaide. The best in-game player duel has to be in round 12 when the Western Bulldogs faced Collingwood. It was a Nick Dacos vs Marcus Bonampelli show. Dacos had 32 disposals, 16 of which were clearances, and he kicked 2 goals as he put on a masterclass at centre bounces, especially in the first half. He got so out of control that stages within the 3rd and 4th quarter, it was the Bont himself who had the task of trying to contain him. But the Bulldogs captain got plenty of the ball himself, and his 38 disposals were a career high. He had 10 clearances himself and 9 tackles, but was as clean as always on the outside, going at 74% disposal efficiency and kicking 2 goals as the Bulldogs came from behind in the final term. It was a great game in the middle part of the year and had an old school head-to-head feel about it between 2 superstars. We also saw the emergence of a fair few players. Clearly Isaac Heaney was a major breakout star, moving to a permanent midfield role, winning a 2nd All-Australian Blazer. But he was also joined with the likes of Ed Richards, Hayden Young, Sam Flanders and Harry Sheasel, who transitioned to more permanent midfield roles, helping out their teams. Jesse Hogan won his first Coleman medal, kicking 77 total goals to become a bona fide superstar, and West Coast Eagles Jake Waterman's 53 goals came from nowhere. Throw in Lloyd Meek as a ruck, and Isaac Rankin, who became the hottest player in the AFL up until halfway, and we had another big wave of breakout players, and most of them were from different AFL clubs. And speaking of the clubs themselves, the big winner of the year is obviously Brisbane. A rocky start to the season, and then being down by 44 points in a semi-final, to all of a sudden lifting up the Premiership Cup. What a journey, and what a performance on the biggest stage. Hawthorn also have to be considered big winners, not just because of making finals and winning one from a 0-5 start, but the manner in which they did it in. They took over the competition and were box office, and people right now will be backing them to go all the way very soon. And the other standout winner feels like Geelong. Not many saw a prelim final berth, even after a top 4 finish. They are well coached, have fantastic role players, and everyone simply does their job. Maybe a certain 1 or 2 midfielders coming in might take them to the next level. Now everyone who didn't make finals could be seen as a loser. It even feels like the Swans who made a grand final have fallen in this category, but it does seem a bit harsh. I think we can all agree that the big loser is probably Melbourne, from premiership contenders a month in to a 14th place finish. They were never set up for success. Clayton Oliver had no pre-season, their forward line was a mess, and then Christian Petrarca was in ICU after King's birthday. We all know the issues they have had, and who knows where they go from here. So what a season 2024 was. You can look at any of the 18 clubs and get a very unique story. We really couldn't have asked for much more in terms of entertainment value. Hopefully this upcoming trade and draft period is just as engaging, which it seems like it is, and then we can all have a couple months off before the pre-season comes around and we fully shift our attention to the start of 2025.